So a while ago, I created a video talking about the 18 mistakes that you can make when putting together your property tax return. And it was a long video, so I wanted to create a shorter video. But if you want to watch the whole video, I will put a link in the description box below. But here is just a sample of the property tax mistakes that you can make, which you can pretty much avoid. Now let's talk about the property tax issues that you have. Now the first thing I would say is this is going to go in order of the tax return, but there are mistakes even at the front end. The fact that you could have property between husband, wife, civil partners, and you've got the property income 50-50 split, even though one person is a basic rate taxpayer, one's a high rate taxpayer. All of a sudden you're paying far more tax straight away. So you've not even had that starting point in the correct fashion. You need to make sure that you speak to your tax specialist, your accountant, to look at ways that you can apportion income in the most effective way. I'm going to use my laser pointer for the rest of this presentation to make it easier. We talk about income now. There are different ways of using your tax returns in terms of how you populate that information. There's the accruals basis and cash basis. Make sure you speak to your accountant about that if you're not sure what the differences are. But ultimately, cash basis is much more effective if you are doing tax return. Why? Well, there may be times when your tenant has not paid you in the tax year. You may be expecting 12 payments, but you've only received 10. Or 11. As a result of that, you'll pay less tax because you've got less income using the cash basis. What else do we have? Property income allowance. Now, did you know that if you don't earn more than £1,000, then you don't have to pay tax on that property income? So as long as the gross income is less than £1,000 in a given year, you do not need to pay any tax at all. And yet people, it's right there on your tax return. And yet people just circumnavigate it because they're rushing, let me guess, the 30th of January or the 31st of January. So they don't have time to read these notes, which is clearly says, read the notes. And they pay tax on their property income, even though they don't need to. What a crazy way to handle your tax affairs. The other side to it is if you're using accountants that are generic in nature, they are not property tax specialists. They'll read the tax law and it will say, right, if you are doing certain repairs, it will be capital. But they need to read the property pages to also understand whether they are legitimately a capital item or should be put as a replacement item, which is offset against your income, which means you get a tax allowance. But some accountants don't do that. They just look at the BIM rather than the PIM. BIM, PIM. What's the difference? Well, that's just the HMR legislation. Okay, so go ahead and read that. But ultimately, if you are not claiming for legitimate items, then again, you will be paying more tax. I have seen examples, interestingly enough, whereby a client, we did a review of the previous tax return, and they said about these repairs, they was expecting £20,000 in repairs. And when we looked at their repairs line in their tax return, it was something like £2,000, which is significantly less than £10,000, I'm sure you can appreciate. And what had happened is that their accountant stripped out £8,000 worth of costs because they said the double glazed windows was an upgrade because it's going from single glazing to double glazing. Well, in actual fact, that's still a replacement in the eyes of HMRC, never mind anyone else. So that cost should be allowed. Now, the fact that the client in question did not challenge the accountant and allowed these costs to be stripped out, which, by the way, if they stripped it out of this, that also means that they won't claim that cost against the capital gains tax liability. So that could be number 19 as a tax mistake going on there. So do make sure that you are aware of the 3 R's, which is the repair, replace, renew. If you can categorize any of those costs, then you can get the tax relief, but many people don't. Not keeping receipts. If you do not have a receipt for the expenditure by some sort of tradesperson who says, well, pay me in cash, I'll give you a discount, but you might be losing the tax relief on that. So they might save you £100, £200, But then all of a sudden, because you don't have the receipt, you are now in a position whereby you're paying £500 worth of tax. Oh, why? You're not doing yourself any favour. Make sure you get a receipt from that tradesperson. Make sure that the description of that invoice doesn't just say property refurb. Because if you are investigated, then ultimately the HMRC could easily say, well, that just says refurb. That's capital. Now you have to prove yourself innocence, right? You are guilty. Did you know that? Before you are proven innocent. It's not the other way around for law, but it is for tax purposes. So make sure you do yourself a favour. Get that receipt. Make sure the receipt is descriptive enough to say that it's a replacement bathroom, replacement kitchen, not a new kitchen, okay? Because it's telling, the wordage of that invoice will tell HMRC if they can charge you more tax.